Terms of reference for evaluation. This video was shot during the Interact event, Evaluation, How Did It Go? In Helsinki on the 30th and 31st of May 2017. The aim of the event was to discuss terms of reference and first findings of impact and operational evaluations. In this video, David Alba from the Evaluation Unit of DG Regio will elaborate what are terms of reference and how are they structured. In the end of the video, there will be some tips to consider when undertaking impact evaluations.
All of the aspects of the evaluations. That's why it's very important to think it through and to consider it very, very seriously. The problem lies a little bit on this double purpose. On one hand, it is a contractual document, which your contracts will be based in a public tender based on this document with your contractor. On the other hand, you also want to do your public procurement based on these requirements. And I think it's very important to understand this. If you are too specific in your terms of reference, especially in the methodologies, what you ask in the terms of reference, you will not be able to decide which are the contractors who can deliver, because then most of the time what happens is they will just repeat what you request in your term of reference and put a price tag next to it. But that's not the role of the public procurement. Your public procurement should also, your tender should also enable you to see which are the capable contractors and which are not. Once you are in the contract already, only thing you can do is to terminate the contract, but then to redo the evaluation, most of the time, you don't really have the time anymore. That's why there is no good solution for this. I think it's an iterative process. It's an iteration which you do based on your own environment, and the more ToRs you publish, the more experience you have in your own local public procurement procedures and experiences and tenders and market, the better you will become into it. We have a guidance document which suggests what are the main attributes of a ToR and what should be there and what not. Here in my previous presentation I went a bit more in detail. Here I just took the main ones which I think it's very important in order to get good tenders. So my purpose or objective here is to explain you how we can enable to get good offers. Okay. One, and it's very important that in the ToR there should be a part which explains the background and the context. The more the contractor understands what you are looking for, what is the background, what is the context, which period we are talking about, what is the intervention which you want to evaluate, what's the specificity of the intervention, which are the target groups of the intervention. And we are not talking yet about evaluation questions or about evaluation itself. We are talking about just explaining the topic, the context, and setting the stage for the questions. The more you manage to transfer your knowledge about the intervention, including also the experience from other evaluations here, in a concise text, the better addressed and the more specific the tenders will be which come to you. And this is again a part where you can test your contractor. The contractor who understands the context and takes the time, for example, to look into a bit of the old evaluation results and gives you an offer based on real contextual and real experience, already is a point where you can control whether this is somebody who you want to work with or not. Then there is the evaluation's objective and scope, which is sometimes or many ToRs which I saw, it is taken very loosely. Why? This is a very core point. You have to explain what's the main objective, and you have to explain really what do you want. You want effectiveness, you want to understand achievements, you are looking for impact. So, and these objectives should be limited, so there should not be too many. One or two, maybe three objectives where you say Basically, this is what I want to achieve overall with my evaluation. And these are not yet the evaluation questions. This is really what do I want to achieve by doing this evaluation. Also, you should never forget to limit the scope. The scoping is very important. In order to get good pricing and in order to enable the contractor to see how much work is needed, and we will talk about that later, they will have to give you the offer based on the different tasks and questions. And this is also a test where you can see whether the contractor understands the context. The scope limitation is very important. You explain which period you are talking about, which sectors, which activities, which priority axes you want to evaluate. Because if you leave the scope open, basically you will not get anything. So it's very important to limit, and very, very important to have this evaluability question in your head. You don't know exactly how to do it, but you know it's possible. You know that this evaluation is possible. You know that if you limit the scope like this and this and this, there is probably all the information, just the capacity is not there to do the job. But you have to believe that it is possible to do the evaluation. Then, okay, these are general considerations when you raise the questions, when you go further. And wait, okay. It's mixed up. First, we have to talk about tasks and questions. So, the way your terms of reference should look like, it has main tasks. These tasks, these evaluation tasks, should be a logical explanation, step-by-step development of the evaluations itself. Like you start with looking at the literature, okay? Desk review. Then you want to go to field work. Then after you do case studies. So for every major step, you create a task. And these tasks also have deliverables. That's also a way you can control the flow of the delivery of your evaluation, that you try to define tasks which are really separate and can be looked separately from each other. On the other hand, it's very important that the questions which you raise are specific enough that that the contractor can answer to it, and the contractor can come up with a possible methodology to address it. What is, and I will come back again to this later, because this is something at the end of the questions, how you control the quality of the offers. This is one of the way to control the quality, or the main way to control the quality offer. When you say in the questions, you ask the contractor, you ask the tenderers to propose a methodology, to propose a way how you would address it, and this should be well thought through. It's also very important that there should be a real need. So you only raise questions where you don't know the answer yet, and you really want to know what's coming up. Otherwise, the problem is that after a while, and this we see several times, that evaluations become very long. So 700 pages, 800 pages. Nobody reads that. So really, nobody reads an 800-page evaluation. This is just impossible. So, and there are full of things which people already know. And the problem is that sometimes, but think about it, your own experience. Sometimes you don't know what is a copy-paste from other documents and what is a real delivery. And this is something which we don't want. In order, even for you who is managing the evaluation, you should be able to see what is a delivery. And you have to force somehow your contractor to be as concise as possible and to move out as much as the general text and the references as much as possible somewhere else, in annexes and so on. Because you want to see, you don't want to get into a situation where you, manager of the contract, you have to go there and then to look one by one in the references and to check whether this is really the right quoting from the commission or not, or right quoting from another evaluation. You want to ensure that what is written there is something which is a message which you want to, or this is a message which you learn. The main questions in an impact evaluations are, What change can be observed in relation to the objectives of the interventions? What do we mean there? What are the objectives of the interventions? The objectives of the intervention normally is your specific objective, right? What change can be observed? How can you observe this change? One of the change which you anticipated at the beginning was your result indicator, okay? Now the question is, how did this indicator move? What are the results? What did happen there? Does it tells you what is the impact of your intervention? Not at all, but already this is a start. If there wasn't any change in the result indicator itself, or if in the many result indicators, you have to think about, okay, what are the other effects and what are the other indicators which you can use. I would not limit myself to the result indicators which were defined in the OP, because probably you have just much more activities there, so probably you want to look at much more indicators when you are doing the quantitative part, the quantitative analysis of the evaluation itself. And now the heavy questions comes whether this change which you observed can it be attributed to your intervention or not. But these questions have to be raised. If you only raise the first question in your terms of reference, you have a problem. Or you will have a conclusion which is not really true. The contractor has to be able to offer you ways to do a verification on that of the attribution in different techniques, or it should say that for this task I cannot give you, for this task I can give you, for this task I propose a limited view because anyway going in more detail will not enhance the quality of the evidence. In other parts I will not because or I will because there is much more evidence to be observed, so there is more room for triangulation. Are there unintended impacts? I think, especially in your case, this is a question which you want to raise. Which you want to raise. Okay, the result indicator was focusing on the economic convergence of the program area, but we know, okay, that there won't be too many results there. But there are many other results. For example, in the cooperation or in behavioral change or something like that. So we want to understand whether there are any other things which this intervention gives. Normally, it has many impact, and sometimes even during the implementation, we notice that there are some other impacts. So if you already notice that, okay, this intervention works a little differently, is not the best tool for enhancing economic governance or for economic convergence. But in the meantime, I see that there is a very good behavioral effect, because since we do these activities, the authorities on the two sides of the border kind of managed to solve a lot of other problems which had nothing to do with my program. So that's an unintended effect of your activity. And I think at most of the cooperation programs, there is an unintended effect. And a little bit it's in the theory of change, where you say, okay, whatever cooperation will bring a lot of spillover effects in the general attitude between each other, and that will have a positive impact. But these things might be, these things should be thought over from your own experience. For example, if you have the hypothesis, it works like that, but if it's verified, that's much better. What mechanisms deliver the impact? What are the conceptual features? It is very important to understand that, again, this is a little bit about attribution. Is it because of the intervention, or is it because the intervention had some side effects which initiated an activity, and this is the mechanism which generates the change? Because then maybe you only have to concentrate on the side activity and not the whole activity. It's also very important to understand, is it working for everybody? Is it working for all of the SMEs, or just the ones which have one employee? Is it working for all of the, is it an intervention which works for all type of ministries, or only the Ministry of Economy? Because they are the ones who understand. We don't know, you see. And the more specific you are in the questions and more you understand how the intervention works, the better you can concentrate later on. Maybe you want to use this intervention next time only to a specific group and to try to find more beneficiaries there. And also, this is a question which has been raised, what is the short and what is the long-term effect? This is very important. Is it a short-term effect? Is it sustainable? Or maybe, but here, and maybe I answer a little bit your question on that. Nobody tells you that you have to look at the current period. So maybe when you do an impact evaluation and you have an intervention which is already going on for 3 programming periods, I mean, you can look at any of the beneficiaries which received grants before and see what is happening with them now, to be one of the, or maybe to use them as a control group, to understand, okay, what happened with all these universities where we gave money 10 years ago? Is this cooperation still sustainable? Did they continue to do projects together? And then what you have to do, but these are different questions then what you have to do is to verify whether the intervention is still the same, because you want to know whether you verify, is there any difference in the context? And then you can basically a little bit extrapolate. So you can say, okay, since we looked at it and it worked and it was the effect in last period, we can think or we can expect that the impact will be like this and this for this period. And then you can verify this for the next period. But most of the times, I think the problem is, and all these quotes at the beginning are just addressing the same thing. We don't know how the interventions are working. So actually nobody really knows. There are some standard interventions, but nobody really knows how this support is working, or it is working at all. We have assumptions, we have political messages, but we have a great lack of real policy knowledge, especially because every time it is different. The last period there was a financial crisis. So whatever conclusions we draw from this period, the context has changed a lot. The decisions changed a lot. Maybe there was a great uptake of certain types of funds, but maybe the only reason for that because there was no other funds on the market. So if now we would provide the same funds, let's say to any type of beneficiaries, nobody will take it anymore because simply they don't need the money anymore. But you don't know, and that's why. But obviously, you can't really answer all of these questions. What you have to understand whether there is anything to answer or not. And I think I can already say it here. If there is no implementation, there is no point of doing an impact evaluation. Okay? Because whatever the conclusion is, that will be not because of your contribution. So if you are at a 0 selection rate, no expenditure, I mean, postpone your impact evaluation. There is no, and honestly, I see that, I don't have an exact statistics for that, but I think many evaluations were planned for 2019. I would reconsider them already, looking at the current stage of implementation in Interreg. Basically, expenditure is at 0, so these interventions possibly cannot have any effect. Why to spend the money then? Or then, to be exact, we can do that, but then say that we are not taking interventions from this period, or we are just analyzing the theory of change, and then we will look for concrete beneficiaries from the previous period. That's something you can do if the intervention was continued. But to look really at interventions and beneficiaries and projects of this period which are not even implemented, there is no point of doing that. There are a lot of things which you already done and somebody else did, and I think it's a hassle. It's a hassle to identify which are the documents which already exist, which are good quality, which are the bad quality documents, which have false conclusions. It is a hassle, but it would be a mistake not to provide them and not to give them to the evaluators. So it has to be, I mean, you can't avoid investing time in this. So even if there is an external person who does the evaluation, you need to understand. You need to understand. Because the problem is, if the contractors are 99% of the cases profit-oriented organizations, they will not do extra work for fun. They will do extra work because they know that they cannot get away with it. But the only way you can control that is that you know what you can expect and you know a little bit what you are talking about. And when they say certain data is not available, certain information is not available, in general, you don't have to know the literature. You don't have to know the literature. There's no point of reading everything, but at least the reference of the literature, the content, you need to know if something exists or something does not exist. So the problem is that then they will give you something and you can't verify, and then you have a problem. Also, you have a responsibility problem, and you have I mean, if you say something, if you publish something which you paid for and then it contains false conclusions, it's a bit tricky. It's not your responsibility, obviously, because there are things which you could not verify. But if there are obviously misleading or obviously bad information there, that's an uncomfortable situation. So you don't want to arrive there. There are ex-ante evaluations, and normally the ex-ante, and I don't want to be Hippocratic, and this is off record. I mean, we all know how the ex-ante evaluations, some of them worked in this period, and what's the quality of them. But there are some good ex-ante evaluations, and if your ex-ante evaluation was good, and I know there are some very good, then it looked at the intervention logic already, because that was a requirement. And it was not only the requirement to look at the intervention logic, it was also a requirement to look in detail of the theory of change, to look whether the result indicators reflect this theory of change, to look whether these interventions are in line with the needs of the program area. There are a lot of things in the ex-ante evaluation which are in core of impact evaluation. So if you have a good ex-ante evaluation and it makes sense what's written there, do not hesitate not to use it, because then you know that's your hypothesis on the theory of change. So that's what you think. So then the question what you want to ask your evaluator: we have a hypothesis how our intervention is working. We think this is the need. We think this is the intervention. We think this is the impact of the intervention. Could you go there and verify this? And that's a very specific question, because then the evaluator can look at test points where it can be checked whether it's true, your hypothesis, or not. But for them, it's much easier to do it like that than if you have just one general question, no information. To develop and to model the theory of change is a huge amount of work, especially if this is not a standard intervention. And it costs a lot of money. And I mean, everybody has limited resources. Oh. I don't know what happened. And there are also other evaluations and studies in different sources. I think more and more policy evidence is generated also in the indirect field. So I don't know. We have all the evaluations which are submitted to the Commission or sent to the Commission are in the evaluation library of InfoRegio. But probably there is much more out there in the different programs. So do not hesitate to ask each other. If you want to do an evaluation, write an email to everybody. Does anybody have a report on this kind of intervention which contains the logic? Because maybe if you don't read it, and if it's a good report, so identifying a good report, it's very important. If you think it's a good report and you think it's addressing a certain intervention, it explains how it works, that's already very useful for the contractors. All these things can save you money and evidence. I already talked about the timing, so think about. I don't think at this stage anymore too early is a problem. The question is really when you have implementation where you can start your evaluation and review your evaluation plan. So you do not just deliver an evaluation because that's what you promised. If you think it is not a good time, don't do it, because you have time until to do it later. Data, it is very important, but most of the data you already have to identify. But still, if you see that, for example, in a priority axis you had 5 types of activities and only one is working or one is used and other 4 are not, rethink whether what is the extra data which you can collect, or rethink whether you have to reconsider the data requirements which you put in the evaluation plans. You have to think about, I mean, there is a solution to most of the things, but then it will not be perfect. But maybe if you yourself collect data or identify indicators already, that's something which can help the quality of the evaluation. Contractors, I think I touched it pretty well. They should be managed, so you need to have, but I think most of the people sitting here already have a general understanding about the different types of evaluations and what are the evaluations, what are the evaluation methods. You have to take it seriously. You can't, in my experience, you can't leave the evaluator to do his job alone. But this is my experience. Maybe it's not true in every country. You can't have a kickoff meeting and say, see you in a month. And then they come back with an inception report and say, oh, good, see you in 3 months. So we tried, it doesn't work. No, but the problem is, no, it doesn't. So you have to be in the role to make the decisions. And if you have to cut some parts of the evaluation because it's not working out, it's better earlier than later. It's much better for you if they tell you in a week, sorry, it's not working because our assumption was that this data is available in the statistical office. But now when we went into detail and we really looked at the data, we understand that it is not statistically valid, or this is not fully covering the program area. There are a lot of things like that. And then you have to reconsider. You don't have any other chance. Because what usually would happen if you don't have continuous contacts with your contractor is that they would come back in 3 months, and that part of the questions will say, we looked at it, the indicator was not covering the whole program area, so we don't answer this question. I mean, they can't do anything else. But maybe if you have weekly contacts with them, and then you can help them, because then you say, oh, no, but there is a similar indicator which we collected, or maybe then answer a different question. So you have to be a little bit flexible there. And it's also, again, only my experience. You have to have control of the delivery. So payments only go out when there was a delivery, and when the delivery is of good quality. So they have to understand that you are not willing to pay something which is not good quality, and they have to understand that you are open to cancel a contract if it is not delivered. And the earlier you cancel, the better. The earlier the market understands that you are an organization who does not pay for bad quality products, the better it is. At the first time it will hurt, because you will have to explain why it did not happen to your management. Why did we select that? But at the end of the day, it really worth it. It really worth it. And I can see also at us. Now in our unit, nobody questions that we cancel contracts, because we did. And that's why when people are really proactively coming back saying that if they can't deliver on certain parts of the terms of reference, because I mean, again, off record, you can't avoid that you can't have 100% compliance with your terms of reference. This is just not happening, because your terms of reference is just full of assumptions. So there will be questions where you will have to compromise, because you will have to understand that your assumptions also in the terms of reference were just not correct. If you would know all the answers, you would not need an evaluation at all.
If you'd like to see more details about the evaluation of Interreg programs and projects, please check out the different models Interact produced. In each of the models, you will find various materials such as videos, guidance papers, Q&A documents, links, and other details.